All right, if you want to make your way back to your seat. So you've noticed that we're set up a little differently this morning, although you might recognize something like this from February of this year. Anybody recognize it, sort of? Yeah. So back in February, we did a wisdom panel. That's what we're doing again today is we got some of the wisest people I know up here to pass on some wisdom to you guys. But honestly, for those of you guys who were here in February, it was a great day. It was really, really good. So they have a lot to live up to up here. No, just kidding. But part of the reason why I want to do this periodically is that I really do believe we have quite a bit of wisdom in our church. And usually I'm the guy up here speaking all the time, and that's, you only ever hear from me. So getting other people involved in the conversation, sharing kind of some unique insights from their life, I think is a really, really good thing. I know for me, I've got this verse up here from Proverbs, which is, "The way of a fool is right in his own eyes, but a wise man is he who listens to counsel." I know I've been a fool a lot in my life. I'm typically a skeptic, so I have a hard time. You got to convince me of an idea before I'm going to buy it. The problem with that is sometimes I don't listen to wisdom when it's given, because I've got to figure it out for myself, and I've got to fail, and then figure, oh, that was a wise thought that person had, and if I just would have implemented it, it would have been good. So hopefully this morning we can get some wisdom. We can maybe avoid the foolishness of not learning from others. We need to be learning from others. And so we've got these guys up here. I'm just going to ask them some questions and let them share all of their deep insights with you. I will say this, that you could be praying this morning. This is probably my most reluctant panel so far. Not because they're not super wise, but because it's hard to get up in front of people and talk, right? And actually, some of you, I've asked you about this, and you're like, no way, I'm not going to do that. So these brave souls are going to share with us this morning, so be praying for them, that they don't get too nervous about it. So we're just going to get going. You guys ready? Yeah? Diane says, okay, sure. Well, since you say okay, I'm going to start with you guys. Ted and Diane. So how many years have you guys been married?
I forget.
Got
47?
Yes.
Is that right? Okay, we agree.
47 years. Yeah.
We were 10 when we got
You were 10, yeah. Yeah, of course.
married. Well, she was 11.
So 47 years is a long time, obviously.
Doesn't seem that long.
So
Just working.
is it going? Yeah. Got to get it real close. So based on your 47 years and all the wisdom you've accumulated over that time, what, in your opinion, is the most important thing or few things in living a God-honoring marriage?
Well, if you want to talk, say so, Diane. Most important. Well, first, you have to know God. And that would be Diane and I both were Christians. We met in church or school. It was kind of the same time that I moved to where she lived. So we were Christians, and that's number one.
Yeah?
I think. Beyond that, a desire to honor God. And in our marriage, I would say, because we were Christians and serious about it, we had a common goal to start with. And that was just, it's indispensable. It smooths over a lot of rough spots. You think it's I know there's more, and I don't remember right now. Knowing God. Now, what was the question again?
How to live a God-honoring...
God-honoring life. life.
Marriage.
Marriage.
Let me be a little more specific. How about you said rough spots? How does it? How did God being at the center of your marriage help you through those rough spots? What's the difference there?
Well, we love the Lord, at least we were trying to, and we loved each other. So naturally, I think you want to please the other person. So I guess I should back up. There's always disagreements, things that come up, and just in life, sometimes I can't agree with myself, so I can agree with. But anyway, yeah, just loving each other and wanting to please the other person, and both of you wanting to honor God. That just, it gives you a basis to work from. You know, if you disagree on something, well, what would the Lord want us to do? So it's easier to come to, maybe to give in on your, if you're thinking one way and the other's thinking another.
Yeah.
Which happens sometimes.
It does.
Absolutely. It helps knowing that the Lord is the center. And so even though we both really want our own way, if we're yielding to Him, then we're going to try to we'll go to Him instead of staying like, well, if you'd be mad at each other
Right.
about an issue, and then turn to Him and say, what would the Lord want me to do? And that helps, because we, unfortunately, we are selfish, and we often want our own way, and we know that that's not what is always pleasing to the Lord. And so that's where our roles as husband and wife come in, and we yield. And so,
Good.
Else's turn?
Yes. We'll take the spotlight off of you guys for a second. Hi, Doreen.
Hello.
So, you've had the experience of having a child who walked away from the church for a time. What did you learn through that experience, and what advice would you have for parents experiencing something similar?
There's a verse, and I put it down because I don't have a great memory. In Philippians 1:6, for I am confident that of this very thing, that he who began a good work in you will complete it unto the day of Christ Jesus. And I've had to claim that promise for all three of my children. And it's very tempting when you see your child make poor choices, walk away, to say, if only our marriage had been different, if only my husband had done such and such, if only we had been in the same church, our children would have had a better background or a better foundation. If only we had been able to adopt them at a younger age before they were so damaged. But I can claim this promise because each of them made a profession of faith at some point. But a very wise friend told me God does not have any grandchildren. And so at some point, it becomes their decision and their choice. So I pray, and I always try to be accepting of them as people. And you can't always love their actions, but you can love your children. And hold faith for the future.
Yeah. Good. All right, Glenn. I told Melissa this morning.
This is for Kathy.
I told Melissa this morning you're probably going to do 90% of the talking this morning. So maybe we can pare that down to like 60 or 65. No, I'm just kidding.
All you have to do is get her started.
So, Glenn and Kathy, you have had to go through a life-threatening health scare. Obviously, Glenn went through that, but it was something you went through together. What were one or two lessons that you both learned through that time, and how would you encourage others who have to go through something similar?
I was going to let ladies go first. It was my thing. For those of you who don't know that it was 4 years ago that they thought I had just needed a gallbladder removed. And the surgeon said, there's something more going on here. And in the interim, I was going to a specialist and trying to figure out, he says, well, we need to do a liver biopsy. And so one thing led to another, and there were some problems. And I was teaching down at Chico State at the time, and one day going down, I was praying with my eyes open, and and I just asked the Lord, I said, am I going to die? Because if I am, there's some things I need to do to get my house in order. And I heard him say, no. Now, the mistake I made was not telling Kathy. I mean, it's just, it was, so that can, the things that she went through. But I feel that if God tells me something, I'm looking for confirmation of that before I stand up and proclaim from the mountaintops various things. And so then I woke up one morning a few weeks later, and I just had sharp pain. So I called the 24-hour number on the back of my card for the health, and I talked to a nurse. Bless nurses. Told them what the symptoms were and everything else. And she said, you need to get to emergency. And so I said, okay. We talked a little bit more. And she says, now, Glenn, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to emergency. So all my doctors were up in Reading, so we headed up to Mercy, which was day 1 of 10. And as they got in, and the pain just started, I think I told the guy it was at 10. So anyway, they moved me to the head of the line. And Kathy had to deal with the other people glaring at her as to why does your husband get to move to the top of the line? And as it turned out, now through this whole time, I was at peace. I knew, God told me I wasn't going to die. Kathy didn't know that. And so I got in and got into the emergency room, and then through a number of tests, I think I went for an ultrasound 3 times that night. And I kind of lost the timeline, but it was 2 o'clock in the morning. Kathy can fill in that point. She says, I'm going home. And so at some point, I kind of came to on the operating table. And I could sense the confusion and the chaos. And this is tougher than I thought. I used to go over this pretty glibly. Yeah. So anyway, and this peace hit me like a wave. And I just started praying for the doctors, the nurses. And then the next thing I knew, I woke up in recovery. They went in to thinking they were taking gallbladder out. And they get in there and they look through the 3 little holes, and one of them's a microscope. And my body cavity was filled with oobleck. My small intestine had been leaking into the body cavity. And which everybody has told me since then, that's almost a death sentence. And so they were busy cleaning everything up. And so the next couple days, I never saw the pictures. Kathy says she saw the pictures of what they took out or something, but they cleaned it all up, and I got back to they didn't have me in ICU, but they had me on the next level below that. And the doctors and the nurses, whenever they'd start their shift, would say, "Oh, Glenn, it's so good to see you." And I thought that was just a normal greeting. Then I realized that they were not expecting me to live. But through this whole time, I mean, it's part of my scientific brain or something. I mean, I was just amazed at all the things that were going on. Because I wasn't worried at all that I was going to die. It was just it was an absolutely amazing experience. And I'll insert, because of the lessons I learned through that and the things that I saw God do, I've shared with some of you, I would do it again. I mean, it just, God did some terrific things. And but anyway, Kathy was left going back and forth between Mercy and Red Bluff by herself. And at that point, I'll turn it over to her to tell her side.
Thank you.
Oh, by the way, I survived. Oh, one last thing, and I just have some blood work every 6 months now. I go in for, and my numbers just keep getting better, and so it's just there's nothing I don't think I cannot do. Is that a double negative or something?
I'm not touching that one. Anyway, I'll fill in the rest of the story. He got up at one point after he talked to the nurse on the phone, and he hollered and was on the floor. And he said, "We need to go to the emergency room," because the pain was so sharp. We went up there and got to Redding about 5 or 6. He got into a room. I don't know where he thinks he went to the head of the line. Glenn sleeps all day if he has a cold. So he was pretty much asleep in a wheelchair in the emergency room for, I want to say that's 8 hours, because we didn't get called in to go actually see a doctor until like 1 o'clock in the morning. And they had done a few things with him, and I'm thinking to myself, people, this guy is not doing well. And but you have to sit there and wait, because they have their priorities and all that. Anyway, so we go in there, and he lays down on the table, and they put a little blanket or whatever on him, and I looked at his stomach, and I said, "That's not normal." I said, "He looks like he's 6 months pregnant." Because he had lost I want to say 30 or 40 pounds when this all started, Anyway, so then I don't even think the doctor had come in, but they said that they were going to admit him. And so I looked at whoever was in there and said, "Can I leave then if you guys are going to admit him and he'll be taken care of?" Because it was 2 o'clock in the morning. I don't know about you guys, but I don't feel comfortable driving around at night at 2 o'clock when all the bars close, So anyway, I just, I'm driving home, and I said, "Lord, I trust you enough to know that if there's something I need to worry about, you will let me know." Because, I was clueless. Apparently, Glenn thought I knew more than I did, but he doesn't always share a lot of stuff. So I didn't know all the stuff that the doctors were saying to him and testing for and stuff. I just knew he was having blood work done, and they couldn't figure out what was wrong with him. So anyway, yeah, I was going up and down to Reading, every day. And so the Lord, I did, you gotta laugh sometimes. I printed this out because I wouldn't remember all the words, and the words are really good. This song, I found out when I printed it, came out the same year he had this issue. And it says, let me get down to something that applies. It says, it's easy to sing when there's nothing to bring me down, but what will I say when I'm held to the flame like I am right now? I know you're able, I know you can, save through the fire with your mighty hand, but even if you don't, my hope is you alone. And it talks about it takes a little faith to move a mountain, and it's a good thing because a little faith is all I have right now. But God, when you choose to leave mountains unmoved, you give me the strength to be able to sing It Is Well With My Soul, which is one of my favorite songs. Anyway, so it goes through that whole thing, and it's kind of like the Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fire, And so I would just kind of smile when that song would come on, and it said, well, because I felt like, well, Lord, you told me, you haven't given me any fear. I don't have any issues, going on as far as that. I just thought he was going to have something, minor done, and he'd be okay. But it was really nice to hear that song, and I heard it at least 2 or 3 times going up and back. Every time I went up and back because it was kind of a new song, and it's what they do. And so I would just grin and sing along and, cry a little bit, when certain parts of it came. But so I went up, I think it was the day after. I loved hearing his side of the story because he slept through a lot, apparently. I got a call, and they were getting ready to take him into surgery. And so I went up there, and he was already in surgery when I went, and I went to the waiting room, and this lady and her mother were there waiting for her husband, and so I was hearing their conversation. Anyway, so when the surgeon came out, he talked to them briefly and said, we're going to do your husband in just a minute. We've had to delay his surgery. So then he comes over and talks to me, and he's looking me straight in the eye the whole time he's talking to me, and I'm like, okay, and gives me these photos and points out various things, and you did see them. I brought them home. And I'm like, he obviously thought I had more medical knowledge than I did. And I'm just kind of listening to him, and it's like, okay. What happened was they went in, like Glenn said, and then all of a sudden there's this big leader, he said, a bile in his belly, So they had to clean that all out so there wasn't any infection or anything. Anyway, and that night after surgery, you didn't share this, they panicked because something happened. I don't know if it was blood pressure or what it was, but they were having trouble with his blood pressure dropping and stuff. So it was like, I don't know, 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And there,
The same night?
it was after your surgery.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it was about 2 nights later.
Anyway, so they were in a panic, and they went out to the hall to try and get a doctor, and there just happened to be, this doctor that knew whatever needed to be known about him, that was his specialty, that was in the hallway at that hour in the evening. So he came in, and I remember Glenn sharing that he had woken up, and he was just watching everybody because God had already told him twice he wasn't going to die from this. So I mean, there were a lot of God moments in this whole process, and even in the healing. But yeah, so, but honestly, I was thinking about this, and one of the things I feel that with our son, our oldest son, because he developed diabetes before he went into the 6th grade, and then before, I think when he was fresh, I forget, 11th grade, somewhere around 11th grade, whatever those are called, can't think right now, rheumatoid arthritis. And so I think those kind of helped prepare me a little bit, because I'd already been through that, because I'm the one who had to take him to the doctor with blood sugar glucose levels that were over 600. And I don't know if you guys are aware, but normal is like somewhere around 130 or less, somewhere 120, I don't know. So anyway, but yeah. what they said, I mean, you need to depend on God and just trust Him, and He'll tell you. Sometimes you don't like what He tells you, but on this case, it was good.
I need to share about this 2 o'clock in the morning fiasco. Again, like, you got to realize, I'm fascinated by the whole process and what they're doing. This was not an out-of-body experience, but it was kind of like I was watching, I was just fascinated by the whole thing. So the nurse came in, 2 o'clock, whatever, they're in there bugging you all the time, and I just want to sleep. And so at 2 o'clock, and they had one of the youngest nurses there, newbies, and she kind of looked in, and she says, "Just a minute," and she was checking my wound. And she disappears, and pretty soon she comes back with 2 other nurses. And so we got a United Nations meeting going on here, and they're chit-chatting back and forth in nurse code or something, and because I'm totally awake at this point. I'm just watching this thing, and I've never had so many people staring at my belly, and so, but and so finally the head nurse, she heads off out of the room, and I didn't think, and by this time, med techs are coming in. There must have been 10 people in that room, and I'm not sure exactly what was going on. And so the doctor comes in, the specialist, he was just, like Kathy said, he was on the floor, and the nurse, she says, "Look who I found." She comes in announcing. And so he takes a look, and I guess it was so bad that he lost all his doctoral bedside manner, if they have any. And he just says, "What a mess." And I thought to myself, well, this ought to be interesting.
Yeah.
It just, and so he would say, "Oh, I wish I had," and there was a med tech running down the hall. They had the pharmacy going. It was, just first class service, and it's the nurses. Yeah, where's the other one? The other one, yeah. They just, so anyway, it was, and then after we, the whole thing was done, I went back and we were doing a follow-up with the surgeon who did the original stuff, and so we were talking, and he had already told me, he says, "Well, I don't need to see you anymore." I said, "Well, I've got a question for you." He says, "What's that?" And I said, "Have you ever had an experience like this before where you ran into a patient that you opened up?" And he goes, you can see him cautious. "Where are you going with this questioning?" And he said, "No." And I said, "Good. I'm glad at least it was an investment in your career." And it was kind of like,
All right, back over here to Diane. Ted and Diane. What advice would you give younger couples if you had to do it over again? What do you wish you would have known when you were younger?
I think this is pretty basic, but just as I would tell my granddaughters, Ephesians 4:32, "Be ye kind one to another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as God for Christ's sake hath forgiven you." And I think for couples, it works just the same way as for little ones or whatever age you are. The wisdom of God, He's given us His Word to look into, and I think that is the key in a relationship. I think the kindness. You know, we don't always feel kind about when we're disagreeing, but we need to remember his word, apply it, and it works when we do that.
Yeah.
Not to that.
Oh.
That's a very good point, being kind and forgiving.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I think we're listening to Dr. Lutzer there from Moody. And his wife said something, they were some young couple, and his wife said something, she said, be forgiving, be ready to forgive if you're a couple, because you're always going to make mistakes. Yeah, being a Christian, the things God tells us to do, that applies to a relationship, but just as well as to yourself or your family. I think same principles. Of course, if you're not married yet, which I don't know if that applies to anybody here, take your time. Don't jump into a marriage. Make sure you know each other. Anyway, that's just good advice for anybody, but the other person somewhat can get along. My wife's a sweetheart, so she's really easy to get along with. But, I think I'm easy to get along with. Maybe other people don't. So anyway, but it's going to be a lot of adjustments, so take time and realize you're going to have conflicts and be willing to listen and change your plans sometime.
Yeah. Okay.
I want to give a quick shout out to the pastor. Said there, the verse from Proverbs. Proverbs a great book for anybody, but there's lots about marriage and relationships in there as well. I know. Used to have a Sunday school class. How long did it take us to get through Proverbs, Glenn? What, like 2 years or something?
More than 31 weeks.
Okay, it was a long, but there's lots of good stuff in there. So anyway.
Good. I'm going to say one thing on the mics. If you guys can keep them close, because even if we can hear you in here, there's people at home that want to hear you too. So, and those things don't pick up real far. Doreen, you've seen a lot as a nurse over the years. Seen a lot of guys like Glenn come through the doors. What unique things has God taught you through seeing individuals and families dealing with difficulty, sickness, and death?
Actually, I find this question harder than the other one you were going to ask me.
Do you want me to ask the other one? No.
Huh? What's that?
Do you want me to ask the other one?
Yes, because the nursing, yes, please.
Yes, please. Okay. So I don't actually have that one on my list, but I remember what it was, which is that you went through a time where your husband was incarcerated, and that had to be very difficult. You were raising kids. What lessons did you learn through that? How was God working in that?
Now it's not so easy. Well, first off, I had to learn to stop relying on myself. And it took a long time for this, but looking back, I can say that I finally realized that I was full of pride in that I thought I shouldn't bother the Lord with my problems. There were people in the world who had worse problems and people in the world who had less Christian background, that they would need more help from him than I did. And when you say it, it sounds so ridiculous, but that's really how I was living my life, very independently and self-sufficient. And I have learned that self-sufficiency is a sin. Our children were small, and we were in San Mateo. And my husband told me that the FBI was investigating him and that he would be arrested. And I immediately went into, I got to save my family and I have to save my marriage mode. And somehow I was going to manage to keep our life the same on a single income in San Mateo. I don't know where I thought that was going to happen. So it took a while before I could, first of all, tell my family who were here in Red Bluff. And then God moved mysteriously and miraculously, and there's just too many stories to tell, but he moved us to Red Bluff. At the time, we thought my husband would be arrested and incarcerated within a matter of months. And we moved to Red Bluff in August of 2001. And then 9/11 happened, and the FBI was really, really busy. And they sort of didn't have time for Fred for a while. So it took 5 years before he was sentenced and reported to the federal prison in Lompoc to serve a 5-year sentence. The benefit, the blessing of the 5-year sentence was that he was eligible for a camp. And because he was in a camp, he was allowed to work, and work was incredibly important to him. So that was the benefit of that. But in the meantime, we had those 5 years of limbo, followed by the 5 years of separation. I really like the verse that you put on this today, Nate, because a wise man is he who listens to counsel. And it was moving here, and I'll get emotional now, but it was moving here and then being welcomed into this fellowship that saved me emotionally. And there was so much counsel. And as I began to open up to people, there was a lot of counsel. And so I have to look at my notes again. Another thing that was important was when I finally reached the point of acknowledging to myself that I did feel betrayed, because I was so determined to save our marriage that it took me a long time to actually put the words to that I did feel betrayed. I felt betrayed by my husband, and I felt betrayed by the Lord, because I had always followed the rules and been a good girl, and this kind of stuff shouldn't happen to me. So that was a learning thing. Somewhere in those early years of the process, that we had a women's thing here at church, and we were all out at Bev Penner's house, and Lynn spoke. She gave us the verse, "A father to the fatherless and a judge for the widows is God in his holy habitation." And I claimed that for my children, because they were going to be not truly fatherless, but they could feel fatherless with their father gone. And I claimed that verse for them and for myself. And then 5 years later, I read the next verse. God makes a home for the lonely. He leads the prisoners out into prosperity. Only the rebellious live in a parched land. And so then I claimed that verse for my husband when he came home, and for the naysayers who told us how hard it was going to be to reestablish our life and our love and our relationship and our home again. And I claimed that, and God has blessed us beyond measure.
Thanks, Dream. All right, Glenn and Kathy, how have you guys dealt with difficulties in your marriage over the years? And what advice would you give to others? Not that you've had any. I guess, should we start there? Have you had difficulties in your marriage?
Not in the last 5 minutes.
Okay, good.
I think one of the things, and Ted and Diane touched on this. I was reading an article a couple weeks ago, and it tied in with a message that Noah gave the young people about not being unequally yoked. And this study has just been released from the psychologists, which my understanding is they're as reliable. They're just one rung less reliable than geologists. So but they said that they found out that the common bond of a good marriage is a common belief. And that has an immense lot to do with it. I think Kathy and I have, we agree on a whole lot of our relationship with Jesus Christ. And you would think after 48 plus years of marriage that you wouldn't have any problems, but I don't think you could find too many people on this planet that are more, have less in common, except for the Lord, as Kathy and I do. And so there's those moments of conflict and things, but there's, I mean, for me personally, I play the long game, and by that I mean, I found it's when the Holy Spirit is working in a person's life is when real change occurs. Otherwise, you're just going to respond to belittling or forcefulness, where there's no real change in the person's attitude and everything else. And so so for me and for my wife, I give her a long time, and one of the things I found is I can, and I'm still learning this, is I can make a relatively fast snap decision, process things. She takes much longer to make that decision, and so I need to do that. And just the other day, we were coming back up from Elk Grove, and we were talking about decorating our house for Christmas. And we talked about different things we could do, and then as we were approaching Red Bluff, we came across this idea that I thought, okay, this is the one we're going to settle on and whatnot. Well, somebody woke up the next morning with, no, I don't think we should do that. But there's also the aspect of I can get by. I'm not sure what manna would taste like, but if you gave me peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, I could live 365 on that. And so it's just kind of like, all right. Our marriage, which is ceremony, which is usually a contentious time, was real simple for me. It was just, I was here in Red Bluff, she was in Santa Cruz, she planned it, it was just kind of like, tell me when to show up and tell me when to say I do. And I was perfectly happy with that. And so it really took a lot of the confrontation. But I can rankle her. So then we have to work through it.
I'm glad I let you go first. Always interesting to hear what goes on up there. Yeah. We were joking about it the other day that the best advice is wait until you're at least 30, because you change a lot from 20 to 30. Anyway, we weren't that old. But yeah, having the Lord, I don't know how people even make it, because I don't know how people live through life without the Lord. But we have gone through a lot of issues, and we are not there yet. But I was raised in the church, and I accepted the Lord when I was fairly young. Glenn didn't accept the Lord until we had been dating for like a year or something. And so he was 19. Hopefully I can get it right. And anyway, but I didn't have a lot of training, even though I was raised in the church. And I honestly don't remember the word obedience being mentioned in a message until after we moved up to Red Bluff. We were married. So I wasn't very obedient to things. And God and I had many, many, many arguments. And I don't know how you guys argue with God, but it's really frustrating because he doesn't argue with you. He waits until you're all done with your temper tantrum and then says, okay, are you ready now to listen? Okay. So anyway, yeah. So Glenn got to deal with all that growth. And then we had kids. He was concerned. He said, I don't think I can really do this with kids. I won't be a very good dad. And I said, Glenn, you were going to be a much better dad than I am going to be a mother. And I think both our boys would agree with that. Anyway, but yeah, I think you need to be able to kind of laugh at yourself a little bit, because I'm a bit of a control freak. And I found out one, I don't know, Christmas or Thanksgiving when we got together with my side of the family, that my whole family is that way, So Glenn has done a very good job at helping me to not be such a control freak, which I did not appreciate at all. But so it's a process of learning, and I'm glad to hear that, because I thought he was going to say there's probably few people that have as much in common as we do, and I'm going. So I was glad he said the other, because I know God has a sense of humor because of people in marriages. He takes two people that are total opposites, puts them together, and says, now live together and be happy. And you're like, right. And you think you're so smart at 21 or whatever, I did. And then you find out you're not as smart as you thought you were. Yeah. So you've got to have a good relationship with the Lord, and he has to be the one that you are working to please. And every time you think you have a problem with your spouse, it's probably your problem. At least that's how it works for me. God always says, have you thought about this? What about when you do this? It's like, oh, shoot. I mean, one time we were in a canoe going down the Sacramento River. He knows this story. I've said it many times. With another couple. And Glenn had been in a canoe all summer long doing, I don't know what kind of counts on the river, because he worked for Water Resources. And it was a terrible day to be on the river in a canoe. They dumped. Well, then we dumped. And I got in that boat, and in that canoe, and I am hanging on. My knuckles were tight, and we were in like 3 feet of water, but it was ripply. And I said, Lord, if there's something you want to deal with him on, please do it when I'm not here. Oh my gosh. If you've ever dumped in the river, it's not fun. It's cold. Anyway, plus he's a much better swimmer than I am. But yeah, you've got to have the Lord. You've got to work on your relationship with him, because if you try and mold and shape your spouse, it's not going to work. Yeah. I can tell you from experience. But it's interesting. And 48 plus years, and we're still here.
Still here. All right, we're about out of time. I'm going to ask you guys one last question. This is for all of you guys. You can go in any order. But how would each of you like to be remembered when you're gone?
Kathy wanted to go first. She just went.
I nothing.
You got, okay, she doesn't want to be remembered. Well, I'll start. I'll just. It's kind of like I would like to be remembered as one who walked with the Lord and was faithful to the very end. I finished the race, and and that's kept me out of a lot of trouble because every once in a while you get the bit in your mouth, and I'm going, I'm not going to finish the race well if I go in this direction.
Good. Yeah, I love it.
I agree, Glenn. So does Diane.
You don't want to expand on that at all, or just did.
Loving and kind. Best with the Lord.
Can you say that on the mic again? Because
Oh.
it was really good.
Loving and kind is something that I would want to have be remembered by, but finishing the race and with the Lord is the major.
Yeah.
Thank you, Glenn.
I think I would say helpful, loving, and faithful.
Can I put a quick perspective on that?
Yeah.
Maybe I should listen to Proverbs and not say anything. But I was looking, just happened to have Diane's got this box out the other day, and I guess it's my mother's stuff, like pictures and letters and all this stuff. And I was looking at some of it, and I hadn't seen some of it, like picture of her grandfather and his brother, who, I don't even think she ever met him. And I didn't. I remember one time we were looking at some of Diane's family stuff, but we didn't know who they were. So I guess my point is, it doesn't really matter for very long.
Well, I will just say briefly that I think the two things that I see is that I've had to learn, and I say that seriously, I have had to learn to love Jesus and to trust him, because otherwise I would not make it through life, because I tried to do everything my own way. So you people don't hear what doesn't come out of the mouth. So you don't know how much things have changed in my life. But yeah, I do trust God above all else.
That's good. Well, thank you guys. Let me pray for us, and then Melissa will give some announcements. Lord, I am just so thankful that you put this morning together, that you knew exactly who was going to be on this panel this morning, and just the encouraging and wise words that have been shared this morning. Just thank you for how you've been working in every single one of these lives that shared this morning, and just that you've been faithful. I mean, it just seems to be the theme throughout all of their sharing, is that you've been the one at work. You've been the one that's worthy of trusting. And so we're just thankful to you for being that kind of a God, for shaping our lives the way that you have, because of who you are and in spite of who we are. So we're just really, really thankful. Thank you for their willingness to sit up here this morning and speak into our lives. Just pray that we would take one or two of the things that have been shared this morning and just choose to integrate them into our lives, so that we don't have to learn the hard way, but we can be wise and not foolish by taking their example. Thank you for this morning. In your name, amen.
Good morning. I hope you guys all had a great Thanksgiving week. We had a lot of fun we got to go see our kids. So that was super fun for us. My mom heart is full. Just a couple things I want to highlight on your bulletin. Angel Tree starts today. So the little tree is there on the counter there into the office. If you're interested in doing that, if you don't know what it is, I'll just explain it really quick. We minister to people who they might be in prison, or they are in prison, and they don't have the ability to buy a gift for their kids. And so that's our chance to go out and get a gift, and then we put this little sticker on it, and it's from their parent. It's not from us. We just are helping the parent who can't go shopping because they're incarcerated right now. So there's some angels on the tree. I'll have more next week too, but this one is the one I stole. It's for RJ. It tells you how old they are. It tells you whether they're a boy or girl, and then it has gift suggestions on the bottom. So those are on the tree back there. If you want to participate, we'd love to have you do that. Gifts are due back on December 16th, which is a Thursday, so you can bring them back anytime between now and then. I just kind of need them for sure by the 16th, and then we'll go out and deliver on the 19th. So that's Angel Tree. Our lights out here, we decided to name it the Light of the World. I mean, we were down there in San Diego, and Nate and my dad were coming up with all great puns for the light displays. We landed on Light of the World. So that was the best. Anyway, if you didn't get a chance to see it last week after Pie and Praise, it's really cool, and they've added more things to it even this last week. But it's going to be, the lights are going to be on every night from 5 to 10 starting December 1st, right? Praise God, we hope so. So thanks to Jane and her team for putting that together. We're really excited about just the opportunity for our community to come onto our campus. We've put it on our webpage. We're going to put it on Facebook. Jen's putting it in the newspaper. So hopefully people will come and take a look. So there's a couple. Right. Yeah. People are going to be there. So that's all I've got. You guys have a great week, and you're dismissed.